Hello again, and happy Thursday, everybody, and welcome to Horrifically Charming, where we embrace the dark, live the horror, and dissect it all. I'm your host, Joe Thomas, and on tonight's episode, we're going to be discussing magic in horror films. Okay, diving right in. So, right off the bat, I will tell you this was a very difficult subject to even research. Everything is just kind of all over the board with this in and I'm just going to go off my notes here because it really, I mean, it took some work getting this done. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give you two definitions here because magic in and of itself encompasses so many different things, but I want to give you two main definitions that I think apply to horror. The first one being magic in and of itself. So, magic for us for this is going to be the use of rituals, beliefs, or actions to manipulate supernatural or natural forces. Think of it as magic is doing. Okay. So, if magic were doing something, okay. And often there's no defense against magic. And then you come into supernatural. So, supernatural is entities or phenomena that are beyond the laws of nature. Now, when it comes to supernatural, we're viewing. So think werewolves, vampires, things like that. So we're not doing something when we're encountering supernatural necessarily. It's that we're viewing something like a vampire or a werewolf or something like that. So magic, supernatural, those are kind of the differences there because one of the things I found is it's a very hard definition to really just be like, this is the clear of where it goes into horror when you're talking about magic. So again, this was not an easy subject to research at all. One of the things that I'll clarify is so in and forgive me, I wrote it down and I can't find the paper that I wrote it down on, but in magic there are four different really kinds of magic. There's cruelty and revenge, there is bloodline, there is like haunted grounds, and then there is like devil or the occult kind of thing. So those are kind of the four different magic things. And again, we're talking magic, not necessarily supernatural, although the differentiation between the two when it comes to horror is very hard to clarify in some movies. And we'll get into that a little bit later. So for me, when in doing the research that I did on this subject, what I found is that horror and magic, very much like horror and sex, if you listen to last week's episode, are very intertwined. I mean, literally the very first horror movie, what is considered the very first horror movie, and it's in French, guys. It's Le Manière du Diablo. It's from 1896. Okay, it's 3 minutes long, but literally this very first horror movie has magic in it. So magic and horror have literally, as far as cinema, have been together since the beginning. And where I say sometimes there gets some confusion is like if you look at movies like Dracula. Okay, Dracula for me is supernatural, but there are people who would consider that a magic movie. Same thing with going into later. And I have a list that we're going to go through as well, guys, but like The Conjuring came up quite a few times in my research. However, for me, The Conjuring is not a magic witchcraft kind of movie. It is a paranormal or supernatural movie. So in a lot of the research and lists that I found trying to go in and see, what the top magic movies or witchcraft movies were, there's a lot of crossover with what I myself would consider paranormal. So one of the things that I did discover and I did watch quite a few movies in the last week in doing the research on this, that I haven't seen before. But one of the things that I did kind of come to realize is that magic in and of itself can sometimes be the character. So even when you get into movies like Harry Potter, things like that, Harry Potter is the character in Harry Potter. But the magic in Harry Potter, and I know this isn't a horror movie, but it's one that everybody knows, so I'm using it as an example, okay? The magic that is used in the movie Harry Potter is its own character in its own right, because although Harry is doing the magic and what it is resulting in is its own character, and we're fascinated by that sometimes. One of the things in this past week of research that I did discover too is that it seems like the opinions on magic and witchcraft and everything and where it crosses from just magic into horror magic, the opinions on where that line is are just all over the place. And it seems like no two people agree on the same line at all. So, the other thing I discovered in this is no two lists. And there are a lot of lists on horror movies and magic. No two lists are the same. I will tell you that a couple of the lists that I found from, I think I can remember the name of the site, IMBD, I believe. Even though there are several different lists like magic, witchcraft, occult, they have all these different lists for pretty much the same subjects. But there are certain movies, and 3 in particular that we're going to go over, that are on all of those lists. So if you haven't watched those, I'm going to highly recommend that you do. So the next step that we're going to go into is now we're going to go into a breakdown of my top 13. Yes, 13, because it's my favorite number. It's my lucky number. The top 13 movies I feel that are horror magic, horror witchcraft, horror whatever, but just magic in and of itself. This movie would not be the same without the magical aspect of it. Okay. So number 13 for me is one that hopefully a lot of you have heard of. It's Suspiria. So Suspiria came out in 1977. They did a remake in 2018, but Suspiria is about an American ballet dancer who goes to Germany to attend a ballet school. And while she's there, she starts to become ill and she's very unsettled. And she ends up, discovering the secret heritage of this, or not heritage, but secret. I'm trying to think of the word here. History, the secret history of the school. So I don't want to ruin it if people haven't seen it, but Suspiria is one of those ones. A lot of people are going to be shocked that it's number 13 on my list, because Suspiria is one of those ones that is on every single list. If you talk about magic horror, especially witchcraft, Suspiria is always on the list. Is it a good movie? Yes. Especially the original is very shot in that, where everything is done in shades of red and things like that. And the music is very overwhelming. If you're listening to it on a regular television without like Dolby, when the music comes in, it's very like you can't hear this talking over the music. It's kind of annoying, actually. But it is one of those movies that you can definitely tell the age of it, and not necessarily because of the actors or the looks, but it's the way it's shot, the coloration and things like that. You can definitely tell this was shot back in the 60s, because or I believe that one came out in the 70s. Yeah, 1977, and then the remake was in 2018. So then we're going to go to number 12. Number 12 is I hope I'm saying this right, Pyewacket. So this came out in 2017. And this is a movie about a teenage girl who goes into the woods to perform this ritual to raise a witch, that she wants this witch to kill her mother, but she ends up waking something else up instead. So, yeah. This is actually a good movie. Putting it at number 12 was just because it in my other ones that are to come, it was not quite as scary for me, but definitely has to be included in anything that I feel is horror and magic. Then we go to number 11. Number 11 is The Wretched from 2017. So this is a good movie. And for me, watching it is one of those ones that I'm pretty good at guessing where movies are going. This one kind of threw me off a couple different times. So it is a good watch, but it's essentially about a teenage boy who comes to live with his dad. Mom and dad are getting a divorce. So he comes to live with his dad, and the neighbor gets possessed, I guess, or taken over by a 1,000-year-old witch who is brutal. And so boy takes on 1,000-year-old witch and chaos ensues. But it is a very good movie and I did enjoy it. For me, number 10, and I have a lot of people who have contacted me and said, how can you put The Craft from 1996 in as a horror movie? And for me, if you watched my first episode where we kind of went through the subgenres of horror, so horror doesn't have to be bloody. And for me, The Craft, the reason why I consider it a horror movie is because watching the things that happen in this movie and thinking that someone could have that ability to control you or affect your life, to me, that is a psychological horror. That is terrifying to think someone could do that to me. So The Craft comes in at number 10 here for me. For those of you that aren't familiar with it, new girl in town, teenage girl comes into town. She is very much has abilities, and she hooks up with these three girls that go to the same school who are kind of bullied, kind of had some shit going on in their lives, and they want a fourth to complete their coven to do rituals. And so the four of them team up, which heightens all of their abilities, and say it with me now, chaos ensues. So The Craft is definitely coming in at number 10 for me, and I don't care what anybody says, it will always be on every one of my horror movie lists when it comes to magic and witchcraft. Then we're going to go to number 9, which is going to be The Witch from 2015. So The Witch, I don't know if it necessarily scared me as much as The Witch for me was very much a realistic movie in the aspect of magic and witchcraft. I have to look at my notes on this one. So it's back in the, I want to say 17th century. I believe it's, 17th century, so 1600s. And it's a farming family that their oldest daughter is watching their son disappears, and other siblings are blaming the oldest daughter, saying that she's practicing witchcraft. But there is a witch that lives in the nearby woods who torments this family. And the son that disappears is not the only one. There's other siblings that are affected by her. But this is just one of those movies that it's set in so much realism that that's what makes it scary. There are some things that you're going to kind of go, ew, but it's not over the top. Like there's not a lot of gore or anything like that. But because it's set in such a realistic way, that's what makes The Witch such a scary movie, I think, for a lot of people. So that one comes in again for me at number 9. Number 8, hopefully a lot of you have heard of this one, is Rosemary's Baby. 1968, goes into the occult. I love this movie, and I recently, and I wish I could remember, I want to say it's called Apartment 7A, where in the original Rosemary's Baby, so newlyweds move into this gorgeous apartment building, and soon after, the husband starts to have a good run of luck in his acting career, things like that. She becomes pregnant, but then she starts to suspect that her neighbors are part of a satanic cult. And I'm not going to lie, this is an older movie, so I don't feel bad telling you, you're not wrong, or she's not wrong in thinking that. However, Rosemary's Baby will always be a classic. If you haven't seen it, please go watch it. It is, I know it's dated, but it is such a good movie and it is such a good watch. If you watch Rosemary's Baby and then go and watch Apartment 7G, which is funny because in Rosemary's Baby, they talk about Terry. I can't remember her last name. It's an Italian last name, Gianoffo or something like that. And in the original Rosemary's Baby, she dies. Roman and Minnie, who are they own the apartment next door, kind of take her in and get her back on her feet, things like that. But then she ends up dying. So Apartment 7G is the story of her, of Terry. So I was watching it going, hold on, why does this sound so familiar? Minnie and Roman, I'm really confused right now on what's happening. Is this a remake of Rosemary's Baby or what is happening here? And it wasn't a remake of Rosemary's Baby. It was the story of Terry, which I thought was absolute genius. And I really enjoyed the movie in and of itself, but it really made it special realizing that it was this story of kind of a B character in the original Rosemary's Baby. So again, Rosemary's Baby's coming in at number 8 for me, guys. And then we're going to attach that as number 8B is going to be Apartment 7A. All right. Going to number 7. This movie has messed a lot of people up, folks. Hereditary. So Toni Collette is one of my absolute favorite actresses of all time. And seeing her in this movie really fucked me up because I'm used to her being comedy or rom-coms, things like that, so I was not ready for her in this movie. Hereditary came out in 2018. And so the matriarch of the family dies, her mom, Toni Collette's character, and I can't remember her name, I apologize. But the mom dies, and then Toni Collette's character and her children, they kind of begin to unravel this family history that's filled with all these weird, terrifying secrets. But I know that doesn't sound like, ooh, I need to go watch that. If you haven't watched it, go watch it. And if you have watched it, you know what the hell I'm talking about. So Hereditary definitely comes in easily at number 7. It might have ranked higher, but you're going to see my top 6 and probably disagree, but my top 6 are my top 6 for a reason. So number 6 is going to be The Love Witch. And this movie came out in 2016. However, it's very much shot like in, I want to say late 60s, early 70s is when it, I want to say it, if I remember correctly, I think it's like 65 that they're saying it was in. I'm not 100% sure on that. But you can tell it came out, recently, but it was shot to look like it was, back in the 60s or 70s. And all this is a beautiful modern day witch who uses spells and things to make men fall in love with her, and shit goes really wrong. I will tell you, as much as I am not a comedy horror fan, this does sit in that subgenre of horror comedy. But there are some things in here that you're just going to go, oh, that's just gross. But a lot of it is funny. But it is a horror that you can't have this without the magic in it. And it's just, I love it. I can't get enough of it. I've watched it quite a few times just in the last year. So that is going to be my number 6. Number 5. This is one that I feel like a lot of people, unless you are actively looking for magic in movies, and especially witchcraft, you're probably not going to know this movie. It's called The Witchfinder General. It's from 1968. And so I had to look this word up. It's kind of funny. So during the English Civil War, a young Roundhead, and I was like, what the hell is a Roundhead? A Roundhead is a member of the Parliamentarian Party. Okay, so there you know what a Roundhead is. So during the English Civil War, a young Roundhead seeks vengeance against a vicious witch hunter and his henchmen who have terrorized the soldier's fiance. This is just the acting in it, everything. It's just a great movie. If you are a person who can appreciate older cinema and you haven't seen this, I highly recommend going back and seeing it. If you are someone who tends to just want to stay more in the modern times, don't bother, because you won't like it, because it is a very dated movie. But it is a wonderful, wonderful movie for people who enjoy that. And it is modern day scary. No. Back then, absolutely. So Witchfinder General, 1968, check that one out. Now we're going to get into, and again, that was my number 5. So number 4, it's funny because I didn't remember watching this movie, and then I watched it again today, literally today, and remembered, I think I traumatized myself so bad with this movie that's why I couldn't remember watching it. So it's called As Above, So Below. Came out in 2014. And again, here's another one where you guys know I don't like found footage movies. I don't like comedy horror, and I don't like found footage. This is a found footage that I can actually tolerate, and that I actually really like this movie. I will tell you, I jumped and yelled so bad during one scene in this movie today that my poor dog had a heart attack. I scared him so bad. So this takes place, it's kind of a found footage in the catacombs of Paris, where they say is like the city of the dead. There's over 6 million people buried there, supposedly. And they go in to explore the catacombs in search of something, this stone. And what they find is far, far worse. And I will tell you right now, if you're like me and you can't watch things where like people are not cliff diving, but like going into caves and things like that, where they're scooching through because you're like, you're going to get crushed and you're going to die. This movie, just that aspect alone is going to scare the shit out of you. Like, I had to pause it so many times because I was like, I can't watch this. This is just my worst fear come to life. And yes, I know it's acting. And yes, I know it's not real, but it doesn't matter. Just talking about it right now, my heart rate is accelerating. That's how much I have a fear of being crushed or stuck somewhere in like a cave where I can't get through and I die. I need to calm down. I'm already getting overexcited. But so As Above, So Below. Yes. If you haven't watched, and it's on Netflix, so you have no excuse, because I know all of you have a Netflix account. So go and watch it tonight if you haven't watched it before. And if you have watched it, leave a comment and let me know if it scared the crap out of you as bad as it scared me. All right. Number 3. I really hope all of you have seen Poltergeist. And this is from 1982. And Poltergeist. So Poltergeist is on the list. I know a lot of people are going to say, well, that's supernatural. Okay, yes, but for me, this falls under the magic category of haunted ground, because Poltergeist is about a family that moves into a house, and there are these ghosts who at first come out and they're like, hey, we're friendly. Look at these cute things we do. And then they terrorize the shit out of the family and they kidnap their little daughter, Carol Ann, and they trap her in the TV, and we're all traumatized and But the reason that the house is the way it is because it was built on a cemetery. So hence haunted ground, hence for me magic. So I am going to leave Poltergeist in there because I feel like it has a spot in there. And plus Poltergeist is just an amazing movie, you guys. So definitely it's going to be at number 3. Now, number 2, a lot of you may not know this movie. So number 2 came out in 1988. This was one of my first experiences with magic in a movie that scared the crap out of me. And I was just talking to my husband about this actually today. I was really hoping it was out on 4K, but he said not 4K, but he has found it on Blu-ray. So I'm probably going to be getting that. But that is The Serpent and the Rainbow. So for those of you who know, you all just went, oh, yeah. And for those of you who don't, go watch it. Go watch. It's number 2 for a reason, you guys. This is about an archaeologist who, or an anthropologist, sorry, who's sent to Haiti to retrieve this powder that is said to bring people back from the dead. It's just a terrifying movie. The whole thing in it, the way that the voodoo is brought into it. And I know there are some people who get offended by closed practices being put in movies, but I'm sorry, guys. I love this movie so much, and it scared the shit out of me so bad when I was a kid that The Serpent and the Rainbow is always going to rank high for me in any horror movie list, but especially when we're talking about magic. And there's only one reason it's not at number one, and that's because number one is going to be Black Sunday from 1960. So, Black Sunday, again, if you're not into older, if you're not somebody who goes back and watches like the old horror movies, then you probably haven't seen Black Sunday. You probably haven't heard of Black Sunday. But Black Sunday came out in 1960, and it is about a witch named Asa. I can't remember her last name. It starts with an F, Vlajad or something like that. And what was essentially, while she's being burned at the stake by her own brother and family members, for witchcraft, she puts a curse out and on like her whole descendants and family line. And 200 years later, she comes back. I won't tell you how, and raises her henchmen and enacts that revenge. So, it's just a wonderful movie. It is one that it's like Dracula for me. I can go back, and the Wolfman especially. Wolfman is probably one of my the original Wolfman, by the way, is one of my favorite horror movies of all time. Watching the transformation in that movie, I know now you're like, oh, that's so dumb, but it's not. It was fascinating to know that they did that stuff back then, and they still use that technique today. So there's that. But Black Sunday is one of those movies that, even though it's older, 1960, I can still go back and watch it over and over and over again, and I love it. And it's just, everything in it is corny now, and you're like, that's terrible. There's so much overacting. I mean, this woman faints so many times in this movie, you guys. But you have to remember that that's how it was back then. So Black Sunday is going to be my absolute number one for magic in horror movies of all time. So I know there's going to be a lot of people who are like, I can't believe you left this off the list. So just so you guys get an idea, okay, these are just two of the lists that I compiled. This one has, I want to say, 60 different ones on it. This one has 85. Okay. Of these two lists, okay, the only three movies that cross over on these two lists that are like top 10 are Black Sunday, Suspiria, and The Witch. And like I said, Suspiria will always be in the top for these movies. If you haven't seen it, I do recommend. If you just can't bring yourself to watch the 1977 one, then go watch the 2018 one. I will tell you, for me, it's not that it's not as good. It's just not the original. So for me, it's not as good, but it's fine. If you can't get yourself to watch the 1977 one, watch the 2018 one. So you at least have an idea of what people are talking about. The Witch, 2015, go watch it. It's a good movie. And then Black Sunday, they have not done a remake. They have not done a remake of Black Sunday. Thank God. And I hope they never do. But if you can bring yourself to go back and watch it, please do, because I am sure you will enjoy it. And like I said, there are no two lists that are going to be the same. I would love for somebody to leave any comments if there is a movie you feel that should have been on my top 13 that was not on my top 13, because I'm always looking for new movies to watch, you guys, too, by the way. By no means, I mean, I can't tell you, in this list of 85, okay, which, by the way, there are a lot on here. So I crossed off any that weren't American made, because I cannot watch subtitles. If they're not speaking English, I can't watch a movie that's not in English. That's in just subtitles. It drives me crazy, and not because of the subtitles, but because the mouth doesn't match the words, and I hate it. So I crossed those off. And then I tried to highlight like ones I've seen or ones I think I've seen out of this 85. Okay. And this is just magic in horror. I like 10. There's like some of these I've never even heard of, and I can't believe I haven't heard of them. So now I'm on a mission to watch as many of these as I can. In fact, when I'm done recording this, I'm going to go watch. I believe I decided for tonight, I was going to watch. I don't know how I feel about that. Oh, Beezel, Beeezel came out this year, actually, or maybe it's coming out this year. I highlighted it to watch though, so we'll see what happens. So, anyways, guys, that's going to be it for this third episode of Horrifically Charming. Again, this is only possible because of you guys. Well, and because of this microphone, but hey, I appreciate all the support you guys have given. Remember, I think I figured out how to link like the socials on the different platforms. So we are now on Spotify, iHeart, Amazon Music, Apple Podcast. I feel like there's one more that I always forget, but those four for sure. And the social media links should be on there as well. If not, you can always just go to Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok and look up Horrifically Charming, and you'll find me. So support on all the socials, please, guys. Liking and commenting really helps get us moving in the wonderful algorithm world. So please like, share, comment, all that stuff. And then next week, we are going to be going over my top picks for horror directors. All right, guys. So make sure you tune in for that. And until then, I am Joe Thomas. Thank you for coming and listening again, or watching for those of you who are watching. And I hope that every day is filled with horror and sprinkled with charm. Until next week, guys. Bye.